Hi, Mark, and today I want to talk about yet another scandal around Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. Prime Minister Sunak is coming under further pressure over another potential conflict of interest over his wife Akshata Murty's stake in a company. As the Times newspaper reported on Monday, the startup study hall in which Murty's investment firm Catamaran Ventures holds shares received nearly £350,000 last year through a government support scheme. A government spokesman said the Prime Minister had declared all interests to his independent advisor. An investigation is already underway against Sunak as to whether he violated the Code of Conduct for MPs by failing to declare a financial conflict of interest. It's about government support for a company his wife owns, in this case related to childcare. Sunak had encountered difficulties before because of his wealthy wife's financial interests. Murty had benefited from a special status that had since been relinquished, allowing her to pay taxes in India rather than in Britain. She holds a stake in the software company Infosys, which her father co-founded, and Sunak was finance minister at that time. Akshata Murty is the daughter of Indian billionaire Narayana Murty, who made his fortune through this software company Infosys. Because of this, he was even given the nickname Bill Gates or Steve Jobs of India. The company reportedly had sales of the equivalent of 12.1 billion euros in 2021 alone. Murty owns a 0.93% stake in the company, which is valued at the equivalent of 710 million euros. And there are also other private assets. Together, Sunak and Murty have the equivalent of around 824 million euros and thus ended up on the Sunday Times Rich List, an annual ranking of the richest people in Great Britain. Murty was born into modest circumstances in India in 1980. Only a year after her birth, her father founded what later became an empire of millions, even this Infosys. She studied fashion design and sales in Los Angeles and later earned her master's degree from Stanford University, where she also met her future husband Rishi Sunak. After Stanford, Murty worked as a marketing director for a Dutch tech fund before founding her own fashion label, Akshata Designs, in 2007, which turned out to be a flop. The couple married in India in 2009 and moved to the UK 4 years later, just before Sunak became an MP. Murty's mother is said to have been the first female engineer to work for what was then India's largest automobile manufacturer. Murty is also a director of Catamaran Ventures UK, which invests in startups according to her LinkedIn profile. She and Sunak founded the company in 2013, according to the BBC. Sunak stepped down as director in 2015 when he became an MP, and a year later, his wife became the majority stakeholder. In 2020, Catamaran Ventures UK put the values of investments at £3.5 million. It emerged in April last year that, to come back to that story, Murty is not resident in the UK, meaning she does not have to pay tax on her international earnings in exchange for paying an annual fee of £30,000. With that status, she would have had to pay without that status, more than £20 million in UK levies on those earnings. Following a public outcry, Murty's spokesman announced that she would pay tax in the UK on her overseas earnings to ease the political pressure on her husband. During his time as an investment banker and hedge fund manager, Sunak was also able to amass a considerable fortune. As I said, in total, the combined fortune of the new PM and the First Lady is estimated at £730 million, double the estimated fortune of King Charles III. In the amount of, he has 300 to £350 million together with his wife. And Murty and Sunak are ranked 222nd out of 250 on the Times 22 Rich List. He and his wife are said to own 4 expensive properties, in addition to the listed 1.7 million mansion in Sunak's Richmond constituency. Sunak's portfolio also includes a 5-bedroom townhouse in upscale London's Kensington area. And there's also an apartment in South Kensington and a penthouse apartment overlooking the Pacific Ocean in Santa Monica in California. And, of course, now the main address for Rishi Sunak is 10 Downing Street. The British Prime Minister's traditional residence in London's government district has around 100 rooms and can be renovated with an annual public grant of just over €34,000. But we know about this renovation stuff. I'm just saying the wallpapers. So I'm not so sure that he will do something like that. Especially since it's not the only property that he can now dispose of. In addition to 10 Downing Street, the incumbent Prime Minister always receives the keys to a centuries-old country estate. Chequers Manor in Buckinghamshire is just over an hour and a half as a drive northwest of London. Built in the 16th century, it covers 400 acres of English countryside, has 10 bedrooms and houses, and yeah, you can say extensive art collection. But nevertheless, with all this, the British Parliament is already examining whether Prime Minister Sunak may have breached the Parliamentary Code of Conduct over a possible conflict of interest. The Code's compliance officer has launched an investigation into the Conservative leader, according to a post on Parliament's website. Specifically, Sunak could have neglected or not have declared a possible conflict of interest I already started to mention earlier. It's about shares of his wife Akshata Murty in the childcare agency Koru Kids, as the control panel of the lower house announced. The agency is benefiting from funding announced by the government in its most recent budget in mid-March. Sunak initially did not disclose his wife's shares at a committee hearing. However, his office has now announced that he had previously disclosed the shares, whatever to believe now. If the allegations are confirmed, which is not yet known, it would not be the first time that Sunak has encountered difficulties in connection with his wife's financial interests. And such allegations are sensitive for Sunak, because with all I've shown, the head of government is one of the richest politicians in Great Britain, thanks to his professional past in the financial sector and his wife. And the opposition Labour Party has accused him of losing touch with the problems facing ordinary people amid soaring food prices. And during the massive strikes by hundreds of thousands of public service workers against double-digit real wage losses within a few years, Sunak had taken a hard line against the strikers, and now the clinic personnel is on strike again. The Conservative Tories are also unlikely to be interested in their Prime Minister being criticized again in connection with his or his wife's fortune. After Boris Johnson's scandalous term in office and the short reign of Liz Truss, Sunak took office as head of government that promised integrity and professionalism at all levels. And in addition, according to the latest polls, the Conservatives are still far behind Labour. So they really cannot have an interest in that to happen again. But that's why I think we won't see a wallpaper gate again too soon. But about Chequers, very soon in another video I will have to talk about Chequers and Liz Truss. And I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.